guys. So I have a public service announcement. You get to have what you want, right? You get to own your choices. You get to own your power. You get to decide the life that you want. And that is what I'm going to be jamming about with Gervase Kolmos today on today's podcast. Gervase is absolutely so fun. Also, important note is if you have little ears around, you might want to grab some headphones or some earbuds because we have some choice language going on in this particular episode. But you are going to absolutely fall in love with Gervase as we talk about like what it means to really have what we want in life and not just either or, but really write our own story, write our own narrative, pivot, make choices that are going to take us out of getting in our own way and into actually like owning the life that we really want. So Gervase is an intuitive mindset coach and the host of the Champagne Society podcast. Definitely check that one out as well. In 2020, she added hypnotherapy to her coaching practice. For 7 years, she's been empowering women to choose themselves to create the life and relationships they actually want. Through coaching and hypnosis, she teaches the ambitious modern woman how to trust herself, connect to her intuition, and reprogram her subconscious. You guys can definitely check out this upcoming episode on Apple, Spotify, Google Play, and YouTube. And if you haven't already, make sure that you subscribe, make sure that you leave a review. And without further ado, hop into today's episode because it is really a good one. Dun, dun, dun. Well, I am so pumped to have you on our podcast today. So thank you for being here.
And gosh, thank you so much.
Yay. And it's funny because when you and I hopped on and you were saying, so you remember me, I'm like, of course, because you and I just keep crossing paths with different things. So this will be one of them for today.
I love it. I am so pumped to like connect with you and just have a good conversation. So thanks for having me.
Well, welcome to be here today. So guys, one of the reasons why I've never, ever forgotten Gervase is because she's as real talk as it gets. And I love it. It's like real talk. It's sass. If you don't already follow her on the gram for all the stories, there was one story that you did. It was a long time ago. I think you went for a walk or a run. And there was just something about I think you were in California, you were out of town and you're doing this walk and you're just like talking about how important that it was that you just got out of the house and that you did something different and that you just got out of your own way.
Yeah.
And I love that.
I mean, I do that a lot in many different ways. So it could have been California, could have been anywhere because it's pretty much one of my core values. Get the fuck out of the house and get out of your own way.
So let's tell everybody a little bit about we're going to be talking about today because it is about like the journey. And sure, like you might see Gervase in her business and with the Champagne Society, and I definitely want you to tell them all about Champagne Society. You might hear her on our podcast and you think like, oh, she has it all figured out, or oh, she like woke up like this, and we're here. Go like this,
literally, just
right.
Like this.
Like the purpose of our conversation today is to kind of talk about the journey, to talk about like what works, what doesn't work, because it's about not only crafting your business, but it's also about crafting your life. Right?
Yep. Because the business the business can revolve around your life. And especially for me, having 3 kids, like that's what feels good for me. So the two they have to work together in my experience.
But how'd you come to that? How did you come to the place where you decided that the business was going to work within the life rather than it being all the business all the time?
That's a good question because I'm kind of like, doesn't everybody think that way? But I think this is one of the benefits of what I have perceived as a weakness of mine my entire career as an entrepreneur, which is that I didn't get started until after I had my daughter. You were coaching for several years before you had a kid, right?
So I started so Phoebe's 6 now and the company is almost 9.
Yeah.
So I was coaching for probably about a year and a half ish.
And
then
which is still enough time to like create something from this identity of who you are before you're a mother, you know? Again, this is just from my experience and from speaking to a lot of women who go through that transition. But I think for me, I had already undergone this like earth shattering identity shift. And so the business became the portal to the work-life balance that I desired versus, okay, the business is my career. And now I'm brave enough to add children into it, which is I was just talking to another podcast, and she hasn't had kids yet. And she's saying like, it's a different, narrative. It's a different fear because she's like, well, I've already got this thing and it's going well, and adding children on top of it. So for me, it's always kind of been the plan was, okay, I quit this corporate job because I was really unhappy, but I always knew I'd be a working mom. So then it just, the goal became, how do I be where I am, which is I have kids, and I have a kid, and I desire more, and still create work that feels really good. So maybe that, I felt like that had me starting at the end of the pack, to be honest. It's like, oh my God, how do I keep up with these, women, especially in the coaching world, who are just doing incredible things. And I feel like I have this disadvantage, which, like, saying it out loud, I feel terrible saying that, but it's absolutely how I perceived it for the first, I don't know, like solid 4 years of motherhood. I was like, it's not fair because I have this disadvantage, which is this kid that I asked for and received, who's beautiful and healthy and wonderful. But I was so focused on like what I didn't have. And so, yeah, it's great because then when I added the second, that just wasn't going to work anymore. And it became more about, okay, how do I see that I already am getting the things that I'm wanting? Like I keep choosing to have children. So that can't be my disadvantage. I have to lead with this. This has to be my edge. So it's been a little bit of a reframe too.
Well, I love your perspective of it being a reframe, because I had started the business before Phoebe, and like, here I am, like, this is what business as usual looks like.
Mhm.
And then I'm like, oh, hold on. Something about my momentum feels a little stifled by you, the person that I wanted.
Yeah.
And here you are. And there was a recalibration. And I definitely am picking up what you're putting down. There was this narrative that I navigated around, well, now I'm not going to be as successful, or
Hmm.
now I'm not, because, and still, sure, we've got clients that have kids and families, but I'm not a mom coach. It's like, oh
Hmm.
no, I'm not a mom coach. So how do I work this in? So I hear what you're
Yeah.
saying. You need to reframe it, because it's not like we could carry our family life around as a backpack full of cinder blocks. Like, that's not going
Right.
to work.
Right. And I do believe in choice. And so, like I talk to women where I'm like, I do this because it also feels good to me. And I think I was kind of suffering unnecessarily, feeling like my kids were the disadvantage, when really, like, that suffering would totally dissipated when I realized, like, wait, I have exactly what I wanted. Like, my business isn't where it could be if I did choose to put it first, or, like, hustle so hard and do the thing. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. If it just feels like that's what you want, then go for it, do that thing. And I think you can. Like, I know women who have kids and have businesses, and the business is really, really, quote unquote crushing it. But I do think we have to acknowledge like our choices. And so then it just became, okay, no, but my choice is to work kind of part-time with like my kid on the other side of the door, and take lots of breaks. And I also really like yoga, and I like coffee dates with friends, and just like taking ownership of where the business wasn't like the only thing. It was like part of what made me a whole multifaceted woman. And so I probably could, like, I remember interviewing somebody for a Champagne Society event once. It's actually Jessica Mernan. I don't know if you know who she is. And she was like talking about growing the business. And she's like, I mean, I could watch less Netflix. Like, I could, there's a lot of places where I could have that thing that I want, but I'm just kind of choosing to do this other thing. And that's okay. Right. Like, neither one is like the holy grail of success or not. And that's why I just think you need to take a holistic bird's eye view of what are all of your wants and desires as a woman, and where are you actually already experiencing that success. And if it's the business all the way, then like, go for it and like put the kids in extended aftercare and like do all the things and like work nights and work weekends, and you can have it. And if that makes you happy, great. But for me, oh, that's not, I cannot, I'm so terrible at that lifestyle. It's like so not good for me.
And again, it has to do with the narrative. You're
Right.
nailing it right on the head. Like, it has to do with the narrative. Like, what is the life that you want to craft for yourself? Because when the narrative is either I can have a happy home life or I can have a successful business, like,
Mm-hmm.
of course, all the time that you spend like momming and familying and all that, you're just thinking to yourself, like, and this is how my business crashes and
Yeah.
burns, right?
Yeah.
And if you've got this either or mindset, it's like, okay, I'm going to crush at my business. Yeah, it's no big deal that, like, Johnny's still like wetting the bed at 14, right? Because or whatever the deal is, because we've all got a deal. Everybody's got a deal. But it's having both. I mean, even for myself right now, not seeing it as an either or, I got a text message from the teacher, like, Phoebes is having a rough day. I was like,
Mm.
and she woke up a little funky, like in a little mood. And I was like, okay, like, she's healthy, she's fine. Guess what? I went over to the school. Guess what? I gave her a snuggle. Guess what?
Well,
She's
you can.
because I can, right?
Isn't that it?
Isn't that the whole point?
It's literally the whole fucking point.
The whole point.
It's the whole point.
You get to
So
have what you want.
you get to, and that's a big reframe for me too in the last couple of years, is like you get to, and that just reminded when you were saying that, when you're talking about like feeling the either or.
Mhm.
And I think the irony of the whole thing is that all of the working mothers that I know in any way, shape, or form all desire and. We all are looking for the and. Like, please show me that I get to have both. But the thing that happened, there's this like edge where it's like, okay, well, then you are being invited to lead your life a different way, because you get to be the example, the permission slip to all the women. We're all looking at each other like, do we get to have both? And then if you're in a community of women that's just like, like work, or who are all, stopping working for taking care of their kids, from that energy of I don't get to have both, then how are we seeing that it's possible? We're not seeing evidence that it's possible. So especially for us, I think as coaches, we're very much like, out there on the World Wide Web, on the Instagram, sharing about our personal life. And I think that's been a real aha moment for me, is recognizing like, why am I trying to be like, oh, I'm so successful, look at the business? Because what women want is they want to work with somebody who has a good business, but also a really successful personal life. And so raising that up as the standard, being that example, being that permission slip to other women, and telling them like, okay, now go, you do the same thing. Like, your mother-in-law and your sister and that mom at school, they need to see more examples that it gets to be but we want the but then we keep perpetuating the culture of the or. And so I think it's just about more women being brave enough to tune in to like what they actually want, and realizing, okay, this is successful, but I really want and then being the living, breathing personification of both successful as whatever, as a working person, and also successful as a mother, a partner, a friend, like a healthy whole woman. So
Right. And while you and I are talking about the blend of both, like, and if you want to be super work mom, or if you want to be like, that I'm going to turn the page on that chapter. And
totally.
there's not one right way to do it.
Agreed. 100% agreed.
Right. So I'm really down with what you're saying about this permission slip, because there's also, and I don't know if you've read Gay Hendricks' The Big Leap. Have you read that one?
That was like one of my first books. So it's actually been a long time, but I used to give it to all my clients.
Okay, so you're going to love this. So with the coach training program that we run, that's the first text that we have everybody read is The Big Leap. So in the context of our conversation right now, the reason the book came to mind was because of that like crime of outshining. I think sometimes we hide what's working and what's not working, because like we're like afraid sometimes You don't want to outshine, but what if we just flipped that entire narrative on its head and went to permission slip,
100%.
living our life
100%.
with permission slip?
So, I mean, yeah, I think everybody has some of those upper limiting, all of those different fears. What was it? The imperfect, oh shoot, I'm messing it up. Fundamentally flawed. I used to have that one. Well, I probably still have that one.
I was like,
yeah.
Oh, it's Tuesday. I had that Monday. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I'm talking it out as I'm like, oh yeah, this is actually a really good book. I should reread that. Yeah. And I think the whole point is 100%, it's owning your choices, like coming back to owning your choices. And the women that, in my experience, the women who are grappling with, does it get to be and, are the women that I'm speaking to here. Those are the women that are being invited to live in the and. But the women who are like, I love my work, this is it, they're doing it. You know what I mean? Like, they're already doing it, and they're not grappling like, how do I do both? They're just like, okay, I know what I want to do now, and they just do it. And I find that it's more of the women, I mean, like us, you know, who really were like, oh, the and is the sweet spot for me, who really are being invited to kind of rise into that and own that. So
in speaking to the fundamentally flawed, like the narrative that I can sometimes, when I'm in like a mood and I want to really get myself stuck on something, what I'll get stuck on is I don't want to screw it up. And I'm sure I'm in very good company.
Motherhood or business or all of it?
All of it, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So it's like, I don't want to screw it up. So then it's almost like this nitpicky of looking at absolutely everything to make sure, well, am I doing that right? Am I doing that right? Am I doing that right? And it's this drive for perfection. And I think this comes up for me like once a month when I decide to question everything and question it all. And I'm probably sure I'm in good company, but do you ever experience that where you run into like, oh my God, I don't want to screw this up, or yeah, I just did blah, blah, blah with the business, or I yelled at, one of the kids, just crooked, and now they're definitely in therapy for the rest of their life. Right. And not that that's a bad thing. We'll talk about that too, but
yeah.
Do you ever worry about that?
100%. I mean, you're definitely in good company always, because I have quite a loud inner critic myself. I mean, the podcast that I recorded for this week is all about my experience with depression. Okay. So my thoughts are really sometimes dangerous to me. And I feel like I've been in this habit of auditing them so like psychotically for so long, because I realized that my lows are lower than the average woman's lows. And that is my living, breathing depression and me managing that. So I'm trying to think about how I experience what you're describing, because at the other end of the spectrum is what I truly, truly, truly believe in my core, yet obviously the thoughts come in, which is that there's no right or wrong, that there's no like good or bad, that you can't fuck it up. Like you really can't fuck it up, because you're just a soul having a human experience and you're here to learn and grow. And how do we learn and grow? Through mistakes. And so that's, I have my first mentor really taught me via spiritual psychology. And I really think that kind of brings me back from that. I also, in my experience, have like motherhood, I would say, is my area where I feel the most confident, because when I make what I would call a mistake, like when I snap at my kids or I'm like just a shitty mom, I'm not like, did I screw that up? I'm like, I know exactly what I should have done, and I just didn't want to do it. I'm more like I'm like my middle child, really. I'm like, I know what you fucking need, and I am not giving it to you because I don't want to. I am tired, right? So it's more like, it's a different, it's a bit of a tude that comes out. And so then on the other side of that, I feel less like, did I screw up? Because I'm like, well, I know what to do. I just didn't want to. Versus I have always felt in business is where I'm the weakest. In business is where I really am like, I don't know what to do. So I'm going to make mistakes, but I'm not making them in the lens of, well, I wanted to make that mistake. So there, it's really like, I feel, like I said, like I'm at a disadvantage here. Like my brain doesn't work this way. So I'm so in awe of women whose brains are wired for business. And yeah, I mean, like I rethink particularly my business, like every week. I mean, I just changed it again today, to be honest, because I'm like, this feels better today. So I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah, far from perfect over here.
Right. But don't you think though, when we have perfection as the goal, it's just exhausting. It's just exhausting.
And what does that even mean? Like, what is,
Right.
what
Right.
is, it feels so subjective and so unreachable. And I don't know. Yeah, it's not for me. Not for me. But that's, I think, also when you come from the perspective of I'm fundamentally flawed, I don't ever feel like I am perfect. Whereas I understand, for example, my husband is like very type A, like he's a scientist. He researches extensively before every decision, before every presentation, before every anything, because he is used to being perfect. Like perfection has actually gotten him where he is today. And so undoing that is really hard versus for me, I have never had a time in my life where somebody has told me I'm perfect. Like I grew up with a mother who was like the opposite, who just was constantly like, you are flawed. And so that's a whole nother podcast. And I've, done tons of work on that. And sometimes I'm not sure if it is a disadvantage or an advantage because I truly have never felt that thrill of, the parent being like, you are just perfect. The way you did that was perfect. The way what you chose perfect, and nothing. I've never had that external validation. So there's just like, that feels good, that feels bad, that's making money, that's not making money. I feel really good and connected to my kids and my partner, or I don't. And so again, framing it almost as an advantage, because that's why I had to go within to figure out how to navigate my life. It's always been through this, the compass is on the inside, because I don't know what perfection feels like or looks like. If I've achieved it, I'm not sure. So let me know, please do.
If it happened, let me know that it happened.
Yeah, like I don't want to miss
love to
that.
hear it.
Anchor that in.
I love it. I love it. Because that pursuit of perfection can be absolutely exhausting. And then there's an advantage just being like, I showed up and I think that's good enough.
Yeah,
Right?
literally.
I'm here. Everyone's alive. Yep.
Kind of it.
I got everybody. We're all accounted for.
Yep.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, so I'm backing the train up because it's something that I really wanted to talk with you about today, because you have been like what I consider really vulnerably open about your mental health journey. And so what, for Gervase, for you, like what allowed you to be open about your mental health journey? Because I think a lot of times there's a narrative of shame around whether it's diagnosis or feelings or inner narrative that's not Instagram perfect.
Mm-hmm.
What's allowed you to do that?
Well, the shame actually forced me to be open about it. And I also realized that like when I saw other women on social media talking about mental health, I felt like it was still perfect. I felt like it was crafted, right? It was like, oh, here was my postpartum, but now I'm great. Or like, it was like women that I was like, I don't feel like we would be friends, like they're like mental health warriors. And I'm like, what about just like normal basic bitches that are just, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I was looking again for the permission slip that I didn't see in the world. And when it really, really shifted, and it's so funny, it's like the whole podcast this week was after my third was born and COVID happened. So that was super fun. And a couple months into that, there's a lot of environmental triggers that will often really just kick up my depression. And I realized them a little late. And I was not doing great. I, again, didn't realize I wasn't doing great. I was just like, we're in a pandemic. I have 100 kids. Like, of course I'm not doing great. And then I had this literally like light bulb moment of, holy shit, this is depression again. Now it's like more postpartum, but it's not, not necessarily only ever postpartum. And I kind of got this intuitive hit in the moment, do a post about it right now, do a post about it, because as soon as you share it vulnerably, like, you know, the Brene Brown quote, like, shame can't withstand being spoken. And so it was one of those wonderful moments where I like got the intuitive hit and moved on it very quickly. And I did this post about it. I like, it's still one of my favorite posts I've ever done, because it was just like quick. I typed it out. Like, I woke up this morning and realized I'm depressed, you know, and there's a great photo by Shannon Oleksak. And I got so many messages and so much of a thrill, like maybe what people feel when they get things perfect, since I've never had that thrill. This was like this thrill of like, oh God, like I can breathe. The shame was totally gone. And it was replaced with, I don't, just like, I felt whole and seen and supported and connected. And so after that, I really connected the dots of like, every time I talk about this, the shame literally goes away. And the more I talk about it, the freer and fuller and more whole I feel to be my whole self. Because especially, I'm sure you understand, in the coaching world, I have put this pressure on myself for a long time to be like together, like, oh, I've had mental health challenges, but now I'm great. Or I've, you know, I've had a challenging relationship with my mother, but now I'm healed. And I was like, well, but that's not real for me, right? And so every time I show up with that story, I'm breathing a lie and like breeding shame. And so not only is that unhealthy for me, like I can't hold that in my physical body, it's unhealthy for the people watching me. And so I don't know, I just got on this tear about the depression. So this was a year and a half ago. And ever since then, like little by little, I've been just unraveling it. And I'm sure there's more to unravel, but I think doing a whole podcast about it, I actually recorded a podcast called How I Healed My Depression, because I was in a period after weaning off meds and feeling really good. And I listened to the episode, and then before I aired it, and I told my producer, we can't air this. Actually, this is a lie, because depression is a disease that doesn't go away for me. I don't know. I'm not a fucking expert, but I'm an expert on me. And so I feel like this is me again, trying to present like, look, I was depressed, but now I'm healed. And I want to tell the whole raw story so that women can look at me as a coach who is, you know, considers herself a healer, like here to deliver a message to you, and see like, I don't have it all. Like this is a day by day management. So I re-recorded the episode and shifted the story to how I manage my depression day by day, because that's what is really the truth of the matter.
You had post, oh gosh, I can't remember when, but it was something, and I'm going to paraphrase it, but when you shared openly that you decided to take medication, and you had said like, and then I realized there was an easy button. And something about that really stuck with me, because I think sometimes, like whether it's medication or, you know, getting a babysitter or, you know, getting a virtual assistant, or frankly, just like I had a bunch of podcast episodes I had to like go through and listen for, you know, different marks within the podcast. I asked the team and 4 friends to help me, because I was like, I can't do that all by myself. But the concept of the easy button, like how did it feel for you to like awaken to that and then make the choice of like, and that's what I'm gonna do?
Yeah. Oh, the easy button is this podcast is feeling so serendipitous. Have you read this book?
I love the Tao of Po. Yes.
I just got to the chapter on, what is it? Wu Wei? Wu Wei Wei? Wei Wu? Wu Wei. Wu Wei. You put the round peg in the round hole and the square peg in the square hole, no stress, no struggle, right? And I was like, Wu Wei is literally what I have been experimenting with since I had my second child. And I feel like with each child, I've been given this gift of shedding things that no longer serve me. And the second child, middle, was absolutely the gift of the easy button, because I couldn't do it. I couldn't do like trying so hard to do it the way that I had done it with my first, because it broke, the dam broke. And so it was like, okay, well, what if I just tried another way, which was just the easy way? Like, what if what would be easy in this moment? So this has been really like, so she's 5. So I would say this has been 5 years of serious Wu Wei training, not knowing there's a term for it and just calling it the easy button all around the internet. But I think it goes in line with the subconscious belief that we have as women that it doesn't get to be easy. I mean, truly, that's what it comes down to. We, dominant culture teaches us like work hard, hustle, like climb the ladder. Like there's nothing in dominant culture that's like float downstream, like allow it to be easy. That's just not the vibe. And so it's funny, like first I had, again, that like gut instinct of, this is just too fucking hard. Like, what if it got to be easy? And then I started finding like Abraham Hicks talking about floating downstream. And then I find, like this book talking about that whole concept of allowing things to be what they are instead of trying to force them to be what they're not. And so, yeah, my life has totally changed because of that. And I feel like just in the last month, I had another shifting where I realized there was an area of my life where I wasn't doing this. I wasn't applying the deep rooted belief that it gets to be easy and just like floating downstream. And so I think it's also worth noting that I pivot a lot, it's like you're allowing it to be easy, but then between, old programming and dominant culture and what you see around you and your desires and who you're learning from and all this stuff, then you kind of end up turning the canoe back around and you're like, no, straight up the waterfall I shall go, and I can't breathe and see, and it's really hard and I'm suffering. Wait a minute. Oh, okay. What would it be like if I turned my canoe around again? So I do think it's been a process of turning my canoe around over and over and over. But it always comes back to that, like allowing it to be easy. So I'm glad that has stuck for you, if there's one thing, because it's really powerful for women, modern women.
Right. Well, I mean, gee, it's kind of like everyone's all about like the to-do list, and I've got to get this done and I have to get this accomplished. And a lot of times like tying our worth to either what we've accomplished, the bank account, or, making sure that Sally's rocking it in her violin lessons, like whatever. And like we tie our worth to all this shit. And it's just, again, the word to me is exhausting. And never do we have a conversation with each other like about the easy button, eavesdrop on any conversation. And it kind of feels like, I'm so busy. I'm so busy. I'm so busy. Are you so busy? We're so busy. And it's like, hey, can we have a conversation about like, all right, I totally like hacked this Halloween thing.
Yeah.
Like I totally figured this out. Or you know what? We said screw it on homework and we just decided we were going to have popcorn for dinner, or whatever the easy button is of the evening, or the morning, or whatever it is. And just inviting in that inquiry, I think in and of itself could be illuminating.
Totally. And I think it also goes to illuminate that women are just so uncomfortable with pleasure. So I've even found like the next level of this for me has been, it's common that I'll find myself with a group of women, mothers, and we're all kind of like, bitching about, I don't care what my kid eats, or, screw it, easy button. But I'm like, the next level of this is like, can we actually talk about pleasure? Like, what did we do today to just because we fucking wanted to, just because we're worthy of it? Because I think it's like a pendulum that swings. And so there's like easy button, which then becomes just not trying at all, which is fine. Again, like I don't identify with either one, but then we really feel uncomfortable when it comes to, wait, but there is some trying that involved with going against your natural instinct not to give a shit about yourself, or going against your natural instinct not to take time for yourself, or take care of your body, or like eat the food that you really want to eat because it would take an extra 10 minutes. And so that's like, I think like the level above it is recognizing that easy button is an amazing thing. And sometimes I feel like the conversations, especially with mothers, around doing things the easy way are actually women just like giving up on themselves altogether. And it's like, it's a balance, like anything. You don't have to be like, I am this kind of a woman. It's like, what feels like ease and in integrity with who I desire to be? What feels like ease? It's like, well, maybe it is actually a hard conversation with my partner about this thing. Maybe it is actually, having my daughter bike ride when she doesn't want to, but also not forcing her to do things because I want to feel good about myself that she's doing violin, right? So anyway, I know it's just like muddling it probably and confusing it. But I do think that's been the last year's next level for me, is like, it gets to be easy. And some things in pursuit of wholeness can be a little challenging. Like sometimes doing the work is hard, and that's worth doing to really allow it to be easy.
Right. Well, and I think it's okay to have the art of discernment on the difference between an easy button and a fuck it button, right? Like, because I know I have both buttons.
Totally.
Right. And there are so many buttons. Like, to your point, it is finding that balance. What worked yesterday might not be the flavor for today, whether it comes to kids or mental health or the business. We actually, so yesterday we're in a team meeting and 2 of the team members couldn't make it last minute. And I was like, well, okay, that doesn't happen. I'm like, all right. The next thing we know, we're getting on to talk about like Facebook ads for the coach training. I'm like, wow, we have had 10 times the improvement in our metrics and our numbers. Holy crow, what did we do? This must be magic. So we started like going through to really figure it out. And it was that we were marketing to Paraguay, not the United States. No, we were accidentally marketing to Paraguay. We have no idea how that happened. We have no idea, like with our Facebook ads. And it was just one of those moments when you had the opportunity to either freak out and be like, oh my gosh, or just laugh. And we laughed so hard. And I was like, I think
Yes.
let's have a meeting tomorrow. Like,
Yeah. Scrap it. You're not having a lot of clients from Paraguay these days? Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Yeah, I can't say that, but we have a lot of hits. We got a lot of hits.
Oh my gosh.
It's
Yeah.
one of those moments, right? Where you're just like, okay. And I think that's why we have to see that what worked yesterday might not be on the menu for today. And it's just like, okay, I'm back full circle to the permission slip.
Love that. Yeah. I love that permission slip. And
we need
don't
that.
take it so seriously, you know?
Right.
Life is not so serious. At least it isn't to Pooh Bear.
No.
And apparently that's the point.
That is the point. That is the power of the Wu Wei. That is like the Pooh, the uncarved block, right?
Yes, the uncarved block.
It's can we eliminate the forcing and instead allow what is to just actually be? That. Right. And there we have it. It's so good jamming with you. I always love whenever we get together. It's good stuff.
Yes, thank you so much for this conversation. It's like a breath of fresh air. I loved it.
I love how it's in line with your podcast. So before we wrap up, tell everybody where they can find you, tell them about your podcast and what you're up to.
I would say Instagram at Gervase Kolmos is a good place to see what I'm up to. And then we have the Champagne Society podcast. Come take a listen, see what we're all about. Awesome.
Well, thank you so much for jamming with us on all the things for today, because that's what it's about. It's about a real talk conversation. I mean, sometimes it is Instagram pretty, and most of the time it's not. Most of the time it's
somewhere in between, my friend. Somewhere in between. Just put on some earrings, it'll be fine.
Put on some earrings, everything will be fine.
That's my motto.
The button and the fuck it button.
Stick it to it. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.